What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome in to the live stream tonight. The one and only Bill Daughtry, New York City broadcasting legend, joins me tonight. Let's talk about these New York Knicks. But Bill, it's always a pleasure to have you on and great to see you. How you doing?
CT, I'm doing good. You know, a little bit of a heavy heart with the news about my good friend Brendan Brown. Uh, but hey, life is about the living, and we press on. And as always, it is an honor to be considered and asked, and to be a guest on your show.
I echo all the things you just said, reciprocated, and obviously, yeah, I did speak on the sad passing of Brendan Brown in one of my recent shows, and also send out my condolences and prayers and thoughts to his family. I know he was close to you, and you guys worked together as well, and the legacy that he leaves behind is huge. But the season, it's been a mixed bag to start the season. The big off season, has it delivered so far for you? What are your expectations of the New York Knicks, 4-4 on the season?
I mean, there'll be a 45, 50 win team. There's enough bad teams for that to happen. But one of the things I thought would happen this year, even after the acquisition of Carl Anthony Towns, Cleveland was going to be for real. And they are. They are easily one of the teams that people are talking about in the Eastern Conference. Boston is still Boston. They've got two guys who were, for lack of a better word, disrespected at Olympic time. And so their whole season is going to be built around showing you what a mistake that was. Philadelphia, they got all kinds of injury problems to start the season. I don't know. Maybe they'll come together. Maybe they'll gel. Nick Nurse is a good coach, but there's just too much stuff going on there. Milwaukee, they're in bad shape. I mean, that win against Milwaukee last night, come on, let's be real. Milwaukee off to a bad start. Then they go to Utah, beat the brakes off of the Jazz, and then the very next night they got to play in New York. What were you expecting them to be? And the Knicks wire to wire just dismantled them. So I mean, it's early. It's 8 games. There's unforeseen stuff that can happen in a season. There's unforeseen stuff that can happen in a game. But there's some things about this Knicks team that I don't like. And I'm not sure that they're going to be in any position to, and I'm sure they say, well, he always says that. He always says, I'm just trying to speak the truth. That's all. And their lack of bench concerns me. I get it. I get it. Dante had to go in the deal to Minnesota. Julius Randle had to, you got to make the money match. But what's disconcerting is now you got a $50 million man. Last year's MVP is the number 3 paid player on the team. For all the great stuff that OG Anunoby does defensively, he doesn't do the dirty work. Josh Hart can get some of it done. But again, the Knicks don't have any real pieces to trade to upgrade their bench. The injury to Shamit was unfortunate. This injury to Precious Achua is unfortunate. It knocks them down another big. But I'm here to tell you, Precious Achua ain't the answer to what the Knicks absolutely need if they are going to be the team that's going to take out Boston going forward.
Yeah, look, it's certainly very early, and some of the concerns are there, long term. But there's obviously like you said, I agree. The East is a lot weaker right now, and the Knicks need to capitalize. But they're at their most vulnerable, Bill, in terms of building that chemistry. And we're going to look at some stats that you see on screen. Is the Knicks are third in offense, but still slow as a snail on offense with 30th pace, 29th in possessions, but they're shooting the three ball incredibly well with 40%. So that shooting, that Cat, Bridges, OG, and the lineups provide is there, but they're not shooting enough attempts. They're 20th in 3-point attempts right now, but 6th in net rating, very early once again, but third in offense, 15th in defense. What's been the best thing that's given you some optimism, and then dive into some of your biggest concerns?
I like the spacing. I like the way the ball moves. I like the shooting. I'd be a fool to argue those things. I mean, Carl Anthony Towns is a truly gifted basketball player. But I've never been one who had a taste for 7-foot guards, and that's basically what he plays like. He gets his rebounds, but I'll go back to the Atlanta game, a game that, rather the Houston game, a game that the Knicks were in, despite being physically beaten by the Houston Rockets. I mean, the Rockets were just like, you want to talk about fouls that weren't called and all that. That's fine. But they just played a more physical game. And they took it to the Knicks in their building, which is what you're supposed to do. But in that game, I'm watching, and I didn't see Carl Anthony Towns get a touch in the last 3 minutes of the game. If you remember, it was a two-man game between Brunson and Hart with Cat on the perimeter. And I just wanted to make sure that I saw what I saw. So I went back and I looked at the play-by-play of the game, and it was worse than the last 3 minutes. Carl Anthony Towns took a 27-foot jump shot that missed with 3:58 left in the game. His name did not appear in the play-by-play again. One of my criticisms of him has always been when the game gets big, he disappears. And that's exhibit A right there. Now, again, that's not to disparage him as a player. He's an all-star player. He is a solid offensive player. Not good on the defensive end. Not good when you need a possession. Not the guy that I'm necessarily looking for to come up with a big block shot either when it matters most. So that's the troubling part of this. And right now, as currently constructed, the Knicks don't have anybody to do that kind of work. You talk till the cows come home about Mitchell Robinson. He's done. That's just my opinion. I'm not a doctor. He's done. They've operated on both of his ankles in 2 years. And the most he's given you is 30 games. Joakim Noah gave you more than that. You're not depending on that going forward. Precious Achiuwa, he's a get-in-the-way defender. He does absolutely nothing on offense. He doesn't rebound like a healthy Mitchell Robinson. So, I mean, to me, Precious is just a guy. I was high on Huckporty until, I just started watching him a little closer. I don't like his hands at all. He kind of stabs at the ball, lunges at the ball. Jericho Sims, what? So these are real concerns that you have about this team. Deuce McBride has been about as good as you would expect him to be coming off the bench. And the kid from Marquette, he balled out a little bit the other night, Tyler Kolek. Had a nice little game for them. As a matter of fact, I want to say he led them in minutes off the bench. Well, McBride did, and Kolek was right behind him. But those are their two best bench players right there. Matt Ryan was interesting, but the Knicks have a glut at 3 and 4. So where does he fit in? So right now, those are my concerns about the team. And what's even more concerning is outside of Deuce McBride, what do they have to trade?
Well, I think, yeah, you shared all your concerns in one go, but I do think, yeah, there's going to be those, early, kinks to work out. I think there's the biggest spotlight on Thibs, Bill. I really do. I think, getting the best out of these players, because he got extended. Leon made these moves, which are made now, and we have to, build with what we have. I don't see any major shake up outside of this. Obviously, year one, we're going to see how this works out. But you mentioned Cleveland, you mentioned Boston. I don't see anyone else in the East that's as good as the Knicks outside of those two teams in that kind of level. Um, the Cleveland game, that yeah, the Knicks did make a lot of mistakes, but to your point about Cat late in the ball game, Brunson hasn't been the Brunson that we all know. In terms of getting the offense, well organized. Cat obviously late in the game, you mentioned, didn't get enough touches, right? But he showed last night. When you give him those looks and he can take advantage of that matchup. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, super talented big man can put the ball on the floor, like you said. I mean, I know you traditionally like a big man down low, back near the basket, because
Hmm.
that's what you've come to expect. But it's a different kind of NBA now. But yeah, Cat at the long term five, I don't think full time that might not be the best thing. The Knicks are giving up a healthy percentage at the rim. We're 25th in the league in 2 point defense, giving up close to 50%. But our 3 point defense is actually eighth in the league at 33.8%. And so, yeah, Mitchell Robinson, I think this is probably the last year that the Knicks will give him to prove that he can be there and be healthy when the Knicks need him. But yeah, it's a tough, but mountain to climb for Mitch. But I do like Ariel Huckporty, like you said. Uh, a little rusty early as a rookie, but how have you seen him, Jericho Sims? I know you're not high on Precious Achua being the five solution as well. So would you work with just Cat at the five as much as possible, have him play drop and get better on that end? What do you see happening with Tibbs?
I don't see Cat changing his defensive stripes. I don't. And the times when he does try to do that and make that kind of commitment, he ends up making dumb fouls. You made a point about Thibodeau earlier that this is on him. And it is because he's got to develop a bench out of what he has. Guys that, there's no difference making trade in the offing. He's got to figure out this bench. He's got to figure out who he trusts and when he trusts them. And again, you saw the development of Deuce McBride last year. You're seeing Tyler Kolek turn into a legit NBA player, a backup guard right before your eyes. And it's kind of interesting that Kolek is touted as an offensive player, a playmaking guard who can shoot. And then you have Deuce McBride, who is not a playmaking guard, who is not big enough to be a shooting guard that you can really count on, but he makes an effort defensively. So, okay. So you have two guys at one position with a bench that has about 3 or 4 real openings. So this is going to be the year that, I mean, and don't get comfortable talking about all the Knicks starters in double figures every night. That's not sustainable. That's over the course of a season. That is not sustainable. That's kind of like how it was last year. And last year, as you remember, the Knicks had a deep bench until guys started getting hurt. Then all of a sudden, that bench wasn't so deep. And then those minutes started piling up. Hart exhibit A, that when they got to the end, he had absolutely nothing left. So again, and I even mentioned Cameron Payne as I see his picture here. He's another valuable player for the New York Knicks coming off that bench. So that gives you 3 guards. Cam can slide in the front court and play some small forward on occasion. But they still have to find somebody that's going to be that guy that's going to do the dirty work at the 4 and the 5.
The four and the five. So the Knicks lost Isaiah. Mitch is down. They've lost Randall, his physicality as well, right? what was the biggest in your eyes? It sounds like, the Knicks are missing that. So what was the biggest loss for the New York Knicks then in your eyes?
Well, the loss had to happen for them to get Karl Anthony Towns. Say what you want about Julius Randle. Talk about some of the bonehead plays that he would make at the absolute wrong time, how he always dribbled into the defense. But on the defensive end, Julius Randle, while he wasn't a great defender, dude was tenacious. Dude was willing. Dude was available. Dude would go in and do the dirty work. Knicks don't have that guy right now. And again, I'm not saying they're a bad team, but when you get to that level of championship play, very quickly you can see what the second best team is missing. Knicks are going to win a lot of games. People are going to be satisfied with their season. They will. I mean, unless they're just total idiots and know absolutely nothing about basketball. And I don't think anybody in the sound of either one of our voices is that. But when you get to that next level, that championship level, it's those small things that separate the winners from the losers. It's those small things that night in, night out, your best just might not be enough because the other team is better. And right now, the Knicks are missing those two key elements. They got a glutted three, they got some guards. Okay, 4-5, there's a need there. Now, trade ain't coming. Kurt Rambis ain't walking through the door. Maurice Lucas ain't walking through the Knicks door. What the hell? Charles Oakley ain't walking through the door. But they need that kind of player. Somebody's going to get down and dirty when it matters most. And again, Josh Hart is a hustle guy. He does a lot of that. But he ain't a 4 or a 5. Not when it matters most.
Look, yeah, there's a couple of solutions I've got to pose, and I do feel like one of them is to, look at Huck Porty a bit more. He might not be the solution, but he plays with a force. He plays with a bit more physicality.
I like his body. I like his body, and I like his aggression. I do like that.
Yeah. So why do you think he's, couple part questions, why do you think he's not getting minutes over Sims now? And what are your thoughts on OG Anunoby? Locked up Giannis. Is he not that guy for you that can bring that physicality, the tenacity, or do you feel like injuries will catch up to him, or what is it with OG with your perspective?
OG is a technician. OG is a technician. He's wonderful at his craft. But he's not that guy that's going to again, do the little dirty stuff. He's not going to do that. You see OG Anunoby in front of you defensively, you're not going to turn away because he's that guy. He don't take no, okay? He's not. He did a marvelous job against Giannis. But, again, let's consider the circumstances. Milwaukee played the night before in Utah. Get on a plane, come across the country, not flying back in time, flying ahead in time to play a team that was sorely in need of a win. And Milwaukee's got their own issues other than that back-to-back. Their bench is in tatters also. Connaughton is not making anybody rethink anything. Middleton is still not healthy. Right now, their bench is Bobby Portis. That's it. That's all they got. So, I mean, the Knicks aren't alone in that bracket. But one of the things that I will be keeping an eye on this year is now the Knicks have a $50 million player. A player who in 2 years is going to be a $60 million player. That player is Karl Anthony Towns. And when you pulling down that kind of cake in this market, there's stuff that you're going to have to do above and beyond. And he's a wonderful young man. You're not going to find a better person. He is a gifted basketball player. Gifted. But is he a dog? The evidence of that is not there. Josh Hart is a dog. Jalen Brunson is a dog. And I'm not going to do that stupid Newton bark or anything like that. No, I'm not doing that. But
Can,
again,
can we bring out the dog? Because in a couple
yeah,
of games, Bill, 13 rebounds, 11 rebounds. He was battling against Sengun, in the other games as well. I think he's, Tibbs the second chance with him. I think we will see a more, physical type of player with Cat in New York. He knows what the situation is going to be with the criticism, and the success now lying with him and Brunson with this team. Um, but also with the postseason, the whole physicality goes up a notch for everyone. You could be physical, hand check. Other guys can be a little bit more physical.
and he is not and has never been that guy. And plus, this year, I'm sure you've noticed the refs are letting him play a little bit more this year. Some of the again, I go back to that Houston game. Houston whipped the Knicks' ass. They beat them down. They really did. And the other interesting development this year,
Legally.
yeah, yeah. The other interesting development this year is the second Jalen Brunson steps into the paint. He's got a big guard and he's got a big coming to help out. He's facing a double team every time he gets in the paint. Every time. Julius ain't there to take that heat off of him. And Carl Anthony is out there on the perimeter. You don't have to pay attention to Josh Hart. I mean, Hart now, because teams are letting him have it, and you saw it the other night against Milwaukee. Teams are letting him take that three. He's taking it now, and he's making it right now. So, I mean, and again, and a team we haven't even mentioned is the Knicks' next opponent, the Indiana Pacers. They did go to the Eastern Conference Finals last year, did they not? The first time the Knicks saw them this year, Tyrese Halliburton had how many points in
Yeah.
26 minutes?
And a missed dunk last night. They're struggling.
So again, the Knicks are not alone in their problems. But again, when you start to parse it and you start to peel that onion and you start to get down to the nitty gritty, they're not there. There's Boston and there's everybody else in the East. There's Boston and there's everybody else in the East. And as much as I detest the Boston Celtics, as much as it pains me to say that, the truth is the truth. I mean, they go up there on opening night. Really? They're getting their rings. They got on these championship jackets. The banner is going up. Come on, man. They wheel Bob Cousy out in the wheelchair. This joint is up for grabs. Now, here comes Garnett. Here comes Paul Pierce, who I detest with every bone in my body. Here comes Ray Allen. They're carrying the trophy. The fans are out of their minds. You really thought? And by the way, Brown and Tatum both got something to prove all year long. You really thought the Knicks were going to win that game? They're not that team yet. Boston didn't have anything new on their team, and they didn't have Porzingis, and they still went out and destroyed the team that everybody thinks is going to be that main contender, the main challenge to them repeating in the East this year, and the Knicks fell woefully short. And you can start there and go from there with the rest of this season. How good are the Knicks going to possibly be? We don't know. Remains to be seen. They're talking about gelling. They're talking about. I got it. Right now, you're a 4-4 team. You're a 500 team, and you don't have much of a bench. And you're chasing some rabid, with plenty to prove champions.
Like I said, yeah, opening night was a case of they got us at our most vulnerable, and I don't particularly like the preseason approach from the New York Knicks. It was 4 games. The fifth game they didn't play, and then you're trying to build that chemistry on the eve of training camp. But look, I get it. There was a last minute trade for on the eve of media day. To send out two of your biggest players, and it was an entire rotation shake up. So I think 4-4 start. No one's panicking on this end. In terms of the ceiling of the team, look, Boston, we have ways to go. I agree with you there. We have ways to go. But if you look at it, them, you could say, Bill, an injury or two to any team can change things drastically. No Kristaps Porzingis right now. He has the similar to same concerns as Mitchell Robinson, and you don't know if you can count on him or
Hmm.
not, right? And so you tip your cap. Boston got round one, but there's 4 rounds in the regular season to learn more about them, learn more about how the New York Knicks can stack up and find a way to penetrate their armor, and then by the time the playoffs come, they'll have a better sample, and Leon might have to swing another move if he can. But you mentioned that Dole. The Knicks had a Mook Morris kind of experiment. He
Yeah,
would have been a guy to play some power forward. But
dirty
look,
work. Yep.
yeah, the fan base is pretty high on Precious Achua. Do you think he can put his hand up and take that role on this team that Julius had in terms of the enforcer, the physicality, and the ability to improve because he's still pretty young?
He is young, but he's an undersized center. He's more of a four than he is a five. And you've known me long enough, CT, that by the third year in the league, you are what you are. And I don't want to disparage Precious by saying he's just a guy, but he's just a guy. And he has never distinguished himself. I mean, when he was in Toronto, he's playing behind people. He's never really distinguished himself as that punisher. And I'm not talking about a dirty player. I'm just talking about a player to do the dirty work. And right now, to me, that's what's separating the Knicks from Boston. There's a few other things too, because when we talk about Boston, it's very convenient to get into the Brown, Tatum, Porzingis conversation. But in White and Holiday, they have the two best point of attack defenders in the NBA. There's, I mean, they're just head and shoulders above everybody in the East. And I'll even go as far to say they're head and shoulders against several teams in the West, which is quite a claim. Just because of those two guys that usually don't get mentioned in the conversation, talking about White and Holiday.
Yeah, it starts with them. Brown and Tatum can get streaky, but they give the Celtics a real point of difference. But I think what's getting lost in the Knicks' moves, Bill, and also attached to our conversation about their ceiling, is that Leon Rose made this move not just maybe for this year, not for the year after, but for the long term. And it takes time to rebuild back some of the depth that you lost, right? It can take some
Well,
time.
well, well. Now I got to ask a question. It's like, okay, when is it this year? When is it this year? This is year three of Jalen Brunson, one of the most valuable players in the league. You have improved. There is no question that the addition of Mikal Bridges, even though he had to figure out a shot in the first couple of weeks of the season, the addition of Bridges, who's a pretty decent defender. He's not a great defender. He's a good defender. He's not OG Anunoby, but now you have OG, who is that it guy on defense, and you're still missing stuff. And how long are you going to be able to? I mean, look at the payroll. Last year's MVP is now the third highest paid guy on the team, and we're still talking about next year. When does that stop? When is it this year? We play for now. When is it?
I'd love it to be, but like you said, I mean, I'm being realistic and saying that Boston is still at the top of the mountain until this contender comes in and knocks out the champion. They're still the champion, and it is still about finding more about yourself this season, Bill. Go all in like they did and make this trade. But what I'm saying is, in terms of the Knicks' depth, there are pieces missing, in terms of the depth, and how long that takes to top up could be the difference between us, taking Boston down, right? But we talk about these aprons and how tough teams are in situations, Bill. Outside of Boston, there's a lot of teams losing pieces, and the New York Knicks have their core guys under contract, right? You have Deuce McBride for 2 more seasons after this, so that's great. You don't have to worry about that headache. OG's now 5 years locked up. Brunson, Cat, the core of this team. I guess you just got to continue to figure out the center situation, and is Mitch the guy? Can he withstand the health concerns after this season and during this season moving forward? Is Huck Porty a real guy that you can build with? I don't know what they're seeing in Jericho Sims long term to not be blooding the rookie, but clearly Thibs is favoring I think the loyalty or the longevity with him. Um, but there is some concerns with our paint defense. Our perimeter defense not as bad as talked about. We are, basically eighth in 3-point defense, but mediocre defensively because we're 25th in 2-point defense, right? Points in the paint. And yeah, I agree with you. Cat's not that guy to anchor the defense long term, at a full time role at the 5, because his drop coverage and the rim protection just isn't to the level of Mitch or Isaiah.
It takes defense is about commitment, man. It's about commitment. It's about mindset. And when you're caught up on your press clippings that say you're the best shooting big in the league, when you're caught up on your press clippings that he really knows how to get to the basket, he can score the basketball. When you're caught up in that stuff, and I mean, he's not the only player in the league that's like that. That's how you become a professional. You do something well. You do something exceedingly well. You do something that you can do if somebody woke you up in the middle of the night in the off season, and you could go out and do it well and do it at an all-star level. Defense is not Karl Anthony Towns' game. Rim protection is not Karl Anthony Towns' game. It's stuff that you might see him do on occasion, but that's not what he's here to do. And what will elevate the Knicks, and really, I can't say that Precious Achiuwa is that guy. If he was, he wouldn't have gone from Miami to Toronto, now to New York, if he was that guy. Especially Toronto. They had a championship team a few years ago. What was Precious Achiuwa's role in that? Was he even there? I think he was still in Miami when they won the title. I may be wrong. I'd have to go back and look. But again, you flash, you establish yourself because of what people depend on you to do. Every once in a while, you might contribute that other stuff. Right now, the Knicks don't have anybody you can depend on to go in and police the paint, to be that, I hate the term, but rim protector. So I really don't think there are any anymore, because guys don't penetrate anymore. What is there to protect when everybody's shooting 3 balls? But still, you do that dirty work around the rim for possessions, for occasional intimidation, for turning guys away from coming in, which is also a part of intimidation. And they don't have that right now. As erratic as Julius Randle could be, most players will tell you, you don't go in there and mess with Julius, because it's not going to end well. And I'm not saying that there would be a world of difference if he were here, because if he were here, then you'd have the issue of, okay, how do you split time between him, OG, and Hart? and you still don't have a center. The Knicks lost 2 centers last year. They lost 2. And they've replaced the 2 with a stretch 4, basically. That's what they've done. A stretch 4 and Precious Achiuwa, and 2 guys who can't figure out how to find a way on the floor. Jericho Sims is no longer a project to me. His 4th year in the league. You talk about player development, he ain't got a low post move. He has nothing that he can rely on offensively. When he's on the floor, it's 5-on-4. And he's not the rebounder that Mitchell Robinson was. He's not the shot blocker that Mitchell Robinson was. As a matter of fact, you could arguably say he's an undersized 4 in today's NBA.
100%.
He's a slow 3. You know, only thing different about him this year is his hairstyle and his number. And that's not cutting it. That's not enough. Not on this team. You need more. You lost 2 centers last year. Hartenstein, for how he flashed and what he did, great. You knew he was going to get paid. Mitchell Robinson, he shot. I'm just waiting for him to come to the table in January and say we're giving him an injury settlement. I mean, really? Do you really think he can come back and be a difference maker on this team?
I have my doubts. You know, I think you know, there's a clear reason why they're, you know, being more cautious with him. Obviously, there's a lot of hesitation. There's a lot of, you know, waiting and seeing how he looks, how he comes back. But yeah, there's real concerns over his durability. You know, in the postseason, especially. There's a lot of games to get through. Um, but basically, you know, some people in the chat just want to know, you know, hear from you in terms of the cat trade, Julius Dante, right? Obviously, they have their reasons, and there's probably multiple reasons. Julius's extension, all of those things, the lack of losing, you know, the 2 centers. But if you're Leon Rose, would you have preferred to see the Knicks stand pat, run it into the season without the cat trade, or would you still have made that trade?
I think that the trade was the right thing. As you and I were talking about earlier, the NBA now is a shooter's league. You no longer pack it in. You no longer post guys up, not consistently. And I think that what Leon saw last year after Julius Randle got hurt, because the Knicks went from a bully ball team to a 3-point shooting team, literally. Because it was Brunson and it was Randle getting down in the paint and doing all kinds of nasty things to people, banging and slamming. And then Julius gets hurt. And now all of a sudden, you got OG, you got Dante. Okay, Hart's your slugger inside. Hartenstein can, you know, although it wasn't what he was mainly there for, but when he was in the high post, you had to respect his ability to shoot from distance. So you saw this team literally change on a dime last year. And as you go forward, you see the effectiveness of that, and it becomes your blueprint for the future. And you played well without Julius in the bully ball component. So now, okay, let's get into spreading the floor and spacing and moving the ball. And when were the Knicks at their worst last year? When the ball stuck. Last night, Brunson had 9 assists. And part of it was a product of the defense that the Milwaukee Bucks were playing on him. You're not getting to the basket. Set other guys up. Brunson's been labeled as something of a black hole. Maybe that's going to change a little bit now, because he does have guys who can get around the arc and can shoot the basketball. And Josh Hart is starting to become one of those guys. So you have to respect that now with the New York Knicks. So, and Karl Anthony Towns, how do you get this team going last night? He hit those early threes. He hit 3 of them, and the Garden was up for grabs. That set an early tone. And then from there, you can get to the basket with proficiency. You can do other things off of that once they have to respect you out beyond the arc. So I think Leon saw this metamorphosis in his team and saw that, you know what, it's time to change the way that we play. And for that change, he got one of the best players in the league for that. But in making that trade, there's characteristics that you have to give away. And now what they had to give away is the thing that could afflict them the most in the long run. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great way to break it down. I think you give up things to fill other areas, to get stronger in that area, and then you're weaker in that other area, which is why I said it's going to take a bit more time to figure out the glaring holes and plug them. But yeah, we got big supporters of Mitchell Robinson and some in the chat, but as
Mm-hmm.
Bill said before, guys, he's not buying into the durability aspect. No, nobody's knocking the Mitchell Robinson impact as that rim anchor and the anchor of the defense and the paint presence. But where is he right now? Your best ability is your availability.
Thank
Like
you.
Knicks fans are so loyal, they'll be talking about a guy 3 years from now and he's still on the sidelines saying, "Oh, if we just got this guy back, right?
Oh,
Let's
Jerome
see. Let's see."
James.
Let's see if he actually gets back, and I'm optimistic about it, but obviously the sample size is big. It's been 3 seasons that he hasn't been able to stay healthy, so there is questions.
Look at his style of play. He plays above the rim. He's a shot blocker. He's a rebounder. That's stress and tear. That's wear and tear on ankles and knees. And what has he had in each of the last 2 seasons? He's had each ankle operated on. Really? I come down out of that dream cloud. Once you
It,
pick
it
a
might not
play,
be as dire as you say. I think it's a case of he gets back, but then he might suffer something, reoccurring.
it's a hard game. It's a hard game, and I was never a professional athlete. I aspired to be one. I had tryouts for major league teams. But there comes a point in your life as an athlete where you can't do what you used to be able to do. That's why players retire. That's why they learn different skill sets and change roles. Well, let's see. In the 6 or so years that Mitchell Robinson has been a Knick, he has never been a part of their offense. He blocks shots and he is a gifted rebounder. That means you have to play above the rim. That means you have to put an extraordinary amount of stress on the joints of your lower body, 3 of which have been operated on with him. Now, where do you think he's going to come back with this refined game that's going to make him a valuable, dependable part of the New York Knicks? When the body starts to get beat up and starts to go, especially on the professional level, you're not coming back from that. Allen Houston, did he come back? Did Roy come back with the Portland Trailblazers? What was Sam Bowie? What was Bill Walton? Bill Walton, a gifted part-time player at his very best after the injuries hit in Blazer Mania.
It's it's a case of he's the best, the best starting center option we have, and he's out, and we've got to wait to see what happens in January. But yeah, I think a smart front office would be looking at contingencies which is no doubt why there was links to all the other guys. He did get Cat, but I do think Tom Thibodeau will understand based on the games as they transpire and what happened in Minnesota, having Rudy Gobert next to Cat. I will think that Thibs will either dust off Hukporty eventually at some point, but the key thing that you said, Bill, is we've changed our identity with Karl Anthony Towns. So we can give up points at the paint, give up points at the rim if we're so elite at hoisting these threes, shooting them with confidence, and maybe we just win a different way. Everyone's looking at how Tibbs used to win. Well, this is a brand new team now. This is very, very different.
You better
And the
make
point
sure
you made.
You better make sure he gets that memo.
Yeah, I mean, the point you made, we need to get these attempts up. We're 20th in three-point attempts, but third in efficiency. And so get these threes up. I mean, look at what Boston's doing, right? I never looked at Boston like they were a rugged, physical interior team. You talked about Tatum, you talked about White and Holiday, but where are they physical and rugged
They
in the
aren't.
paint?
They aren't.
They're not.
They aren't. I mean, what is the chief criticism of Boston? Well, damn, they shoot 55 threes a game. That ain't being physical in the paint.
Look, Al Horford's on his last legs, KP, and so if there's an area, if there's a world where you could see the Knicks take Boston down, what areas do they have to improve and kick their behind, or is it an area where Boston just laps?
I'm just reading some of the chats. Greg talking about he's 26,
Have
talking
at it.
about retirement. I'd rather wait and see and go from there. Who's the kid that the Trailblazers drafted out of Ohio State, the center?
Greg Oden.
Oden. How'd that work out once he started getting hurt? And he was younger than 26. I don't think he made 26 in the league. Once the body starts to break down, man, there's nothing you can do about it. You get it repaired. You can get it repaired, but that repair is so you can live a normal life, not you go out and run up and down 94 feet of hardwood and jump 3 and 4 feet in the air.
D Rose changed his game a little and bounced back.
Yeah. But again, his game was not predicated on rim protection and playing above the rim. Wasn't. Every now and then he'd give you that flash, that spectacular highlight. But he figured it out, and he figured out how to play on the floor. But he's a guard. He's a guard. The most stress he's going to put on his body is on those quick explosions to the rim. Whereas every shot that goes up, Mitchell Robinson has got a challenge on some level, either to block the shot or to get the rebound. It's a different job. It's a different skill set. It's different demands on your body. Just is.
We got some people in the chat saying, hoist 9 threes for Cat. So, it's probably our best percentage shot.
You'll go crazy if he does that. You will lose your mind if he does that.
Give it a try,
You'll be counting his dollars if he does that. He'd pay to come in and shoot 9 threes a game, 7-footer. What are you doing? You know what's going to happen.
If it's pick and pop, though, it's got to be within the flow of the offense. Don't get me wrong. I don't want us to just come out hoisting ill-advised shots, but Boston do it, and they do it well because they get penetration. They get guys that can get into the paint. And look, let's talk a little bit about Brunson, Bill, because he's regressed a little bit. Do you feel like it's against the couple of bad games were against lengthy wings, and we've seen that story before. So what would you like to see from Brunson? Be a bit more unselfish, maybe not be smarter, not driving into that length like he did struggle in FIBA.
You've got to be a playmaker at that position. You've got to be. And again, too many times the ball would go to Brunson and nobody else would see it. And so now what are teams doing? They're defending him with size and they're helping as soon as he steps into the paint. There's a second big person on him. So he's got to make that adjustment in his game. Now, does he become the guy who is now shooting 9 3-pointers a game? Can you live with that, New York? I think it would fit the position a little bit more, but I don't think that would be acceptable because you've seen what you've seen and you want to see more of the same. And Jalen Brunson is most dangerous when he's in that painted area. But again, right now, teams have figured out, okay, this is what we do. When he comes in, we get a second defender. We get a help defender right away. And it's one of the bigs. And that works right now against the Knicks because, well, what bigs do they have that can take advantage of that open position?
They are going to figure something out, and whether it's Jericho Sims, getting that opportunity like he is right now and not fulfilling what's needed, or he improves significantly. Now, I know which one I would bet on, but there's another guy, there's a rookie there. Thibs has played him a little bit. That was the most surprising thing to me, Bill, where Huckporty played in the Cleveland game. Made a little rookie error, but he was aggressive, trying to get to the cup and dunk
Mm-hmm.
on everyone, which
Mm-hmm.
which you love to see. So I'm kind of surprised he hasn't gone back to him, but I could see it. I could see it happening again in this early season because you
What
drafted him.
one of the most revealing clips, and I usually don't have any use for players being mic'd up during the games, but it was, I think, in maybe the second Knick game at the Garden this year. I can't remember who it was against. But Huckporty comes into the game, and Deuce McBride goes up to him and tells him, these are important minutes. Make the most of these minutes because this is how you're going to get minutes in the rotation. Now, here's a guy who lived it, who did it, came in as a project, got molded. It took 3 seasons. But last year, you saw the value of Deuce McBride because he didn't take those minutes lightly. And he passed that same advice on to Huckporty. And I'm one of those, I'd like to see more of him. But right now, Jericho Sims has earned those moments. He's earned his place on that roster. He's earned his moments in the game, his minutes in the game. Huckporty's on the same mission. Does it take 2 years, 3 years? I hope not, because they need this guy now. There's a need for a player that does the things that he does. And so let's see if he develops and steps into that role and becomes a contributing member of this Knick team. I mean, as you look at the bench, Matt Ryan is interesting. He's a 3-4. He's interesting. He's a homegrown guy. He's a journeyman. He's looking, and now he's got a chance to play at home. He's from Westchester County. Daddy, I like him, but it's more the same, man. Where does he fit? He's just a shooter. He's Jacob Toppin. I don't know. Maybe Thibs doesn't like anybody named Toppin. I don't know. That's
Look,
just a joke.
he's raw. He's raw.
Yeah,
But
very
also
raw.
want to mention, don't forget this center we picked up in a deal, right? He's in Europe right now, but we have his draft rights, and he is a prototypical rim runner, like a Huckporty, like Mitchell Robinson. So clearly, the Knicks are, like I said, they worked on a contingency to have another guy that they can bring over on the cheap. They don't have a lot of money left over, so for next season, Bill, they're going to have to fill out this roster, like you said.
Again, in the chat, New Lord, you're out of your mind. Nets are better than us. They're rookies and confident dogs. as I peek over at the screen, and they're leading Cleveland by 5 points in the third quarter. So
Look,
maybe,
early success. I
yeah,
mean, every
maybe tonight.
e- every season there's some surprise teams early, and some surprise results. They're playing for their lunch. They're playing for a meal ticket. A lot of a lot of the Nets players, their futures in the league aren't certain or solidified, so they're playing hungry. I mean,
Well,
our guys are playing like they got a full belly and they just got paid.
oh yeah, oh yeah. The Knicks are living up to it. They've got a lot more to live up to than the Brooklyn Nets do. It's plain and simple. But I've always been a Kenny Atkinson guy. I mean, you go back to the days of Landry Fields and and Linsanity. I mean, we get to the Garden every night around 4 o'clock for a 7 o'clock game. Kenny would be out there in his sweats working Kenny Atkinson basketball school. That's what I called it. Because he would be out there every night working with these young players, getting them to climb the ladder. He was always my favorite D'Antoni assistant next to his brother Dan. And that Kenny got screwed out of the job with the Brooklyn Nets, and now was on ice for so long with Golden State, but patiently bided his time. And now he's in Cleveland with a team that is, I think it's fair to say, the talk of the NBA.
But
They're taking,
are
they're
they
ta-
legit? What's your response to that? Are they legit?
as long as their bigs continue to play, I think their bigs are better than Nick bigs right now. Did I just say a
See,
mouthful?
let me play devil's advocate,
Please
because let me
do.
ask you this. Did Cleveland not have amazing stretches and pop for the last two seasons, but then fall flat? What's different between those 2 years and what we see, the Cleveland that we see now? Is it
Coach,
just simple as Kenny Atkinson?
I think so. I think so. Because they had reached a ceiling under Bickerstaff, that a ceiling that apparently they're showing signs of moving past now. We'll see. Long season. I mean, that team the Bickerstaff coached, are they going to start to see the same tendencies late in the year? Is health going to play a role? I mean, there's so many variables. There's
You
so
see,
many
to me,
variables.
Cleveland are no more equipped to take Boston down than we are.
I
Because
agree.
how do you think a Spider Garland backcourt in the postseason with physicality and length against them is going to do? They're going to get bullied.
Yeah.
They're going to be a 3-point jump shooting team just like Indiana. And I
It,
like Boston's chances.
it goes back to what we were saying at the top of the conversation. There's Boston and everybody else. And right now, the Knicks are at the top of everybody else. Right now.
That's fair. That's fair. We have ways to grow though. We have a from our floor to our ceiling right now. I think there's ways to go. Um,
Well, what has always been the criticism of Tom Thibodeau? Stuck in his ways, inflexible, won't do this, won't do that, runs the starters into the ground. I was looking last night against Milwaukee. When did OG Anunoby finally get off the floor? About 5 minutes to play. That's an improvement. That's a huge improvement. These guys are being there, 90 seconds left in the game. He's still got the starters in up by 50. You know, how much does Thibs change his stripes, change his spots? Because he's got to develop a bench on the fly. And for that development to happen, he's probably going to have to do some things just a little bit differently. But then there will be
yeah,
nights like last night. All the starters in double figures. Oh, it was marvelous. Oh, they just blew Milwaukee out because Milwaukee came in on one leg if they had that one. They just played 24 hours ago, not even. Across the country. In Utah, by the way, everybody talks about the altitude in Denver. Well, guess what's right there with the altitude in Denver? The altitude in Utah. It's a big part of why it's so hard to win out there when they have a great team. So,
Yeah,
I mean, that was a perfect setup for the Knicks last night. Are the Bucks better than what we saw last night? I think so. Are the Bucks better than what we've seen so far this year? What is their record? 2-7? I think so. But again, it's in the East, it's the Celtics, and everybody else.
you see, just on that Tibbs thing, there was a couple more guys that he trusts, right? They just happened to be out. Cameron Payne,
Mm-hmm.
Landry Shamet was
Mm-hmm.
he was the eighth guy before he went down, and then we know Tibbs, yeah, loved Precious Achua as well. So that seems to be the guys where he's gonna hang his hat on, and maybe the solution to the issues that you see. Whether or not that works out in the long run, they are some streaky players. They are some players that have bounced around the league. In the case of Shamit and Payne. Um, but yeah, I guess when you're capped out and your salary is so high, you are going to have to hit on some of these veteran minimum guys. And I mean, some of those LeBron championship teams, his rotation was like seven men until he got J.R. Smith and Iman Shumpert for basically peanuts,
Mm-hmm.
courtesy of Phil Jacks. So you do have to hit on some of these cheaper guys, but in the case of some of the guys on the roster, Huck Porty's there staring, I think, Tibbs in the face. We'll see if he has to, push that button, right? But it's been a pleasure, Bill, always to talk Knicks, but just to see you, hear your voice, and the fans to ask you the questions and hear what's going down with the Knicks this season. But can you give us a prediction? You know, we might talk in another 20 games. Where will the Knicks be? What will we be talking about?
20 games from now, you gotta take a hard look at the schedule. But I stand by what I said at the top of the show. You're going to be in the 45, 50 win class. Everybody seems to think 50 is the gold standard. No, 60 is the gold standard. 60 is where you want to be every year because you're in the conversation for the ring. You're in the conversation for the chip if you're a 60 win team. But just looking at the schedule that you've so gratuitously posted, Indiana's next. Philly, they'll get some semblance of Joel Embiid.
Maxi's out.
Yeah, he's going to be out for a bit with that hammy. Um, Chicago, Brooklyn, Washington. They really don't have tough game until they get to that stretch with Phoenix, Denver, Dallas. I'll even throw Utah in there. Utah's going nowhere, but that they'll come to the building on a Saturday night. Strange things happen.
Hey, I like that start of December stretch. Pelicans at home, Magic, Charlotte, Detroit.
And by the way, Zion's out again, Pelicans fans. He's out again. Orlando, they've always had problems with guards. They've always had problems with people running their
Paolo will still
offense.
be out.
Yeah, he's got the oblique. So Charlotte, Detroit, again, you're looking at games. Okay, let's do it game by game. We'll do the one loss. Just for the heck of it, they'll beat the brakes off Indiana and lose to Philly. Then they'll beat Chicago. Then they'll beat Brooklyn twice. They'll beat Washington twice. Even though those are road games, I think they'll still win those. Phoenix, they're not going to beat Phoenix.
The Blues, the home games, Bill.
Blues, I'm sorry, I got that backwards. You're right. Atlanta and Houston, they were on the road, and the Blues are the home games. Okay, so let's do a reset. Indiana, they beat Indiana. Philly, they're going to lose that game. It's 1-1. Chicago, Brooklyn, Washington, at home, those are wins. Then that West Coast trip, That'll bring them back to earth. As long as they don't lose one of those home games, the Knicks are still going to be right around 500 going into December. And then they get that 4-game stand where they'll start to creep over and throw in a road game at Toronto. So what do we got? 3-4 games over 500 by the second week in December? Okay.
Yeah,
I,
you gotta stay healthy, of course, but yeah, you basically stay afloat for that road trip. Like I said, yeah, I agree. Start of December, you got to get on a roll, and then that's when the trade deadline is opened up. That's when you're going to be able to sign 10-day contracts soon. Pressure will mount. There's all of those things. Chemistry. There's be no excuses after 25 games.
let's keep it more immediate. I will give you going into that 4-game road trip in the 6 games preceding it, starting with Indiana tomorrow. I'll say the Knicks will win 4 of those 6 games.
Yeah, I can see that. I can
They
see
win
that.
4. They win 4 of those 6. They go on the road. 4 games over 500, and then the fun starts because I see 1, 2,
Yeah.
3 losses on that road on that Western swing. But something strange always happens, doesn't it? They're,
Well,
they're going to win one of those games you don't think they're going to win. They'll get one of
yeah,
them.
like I said, I reckon they'll lose Utah, then they'll beat Denver or Dallas. Yeah, it always happens. They drop
Yeah,
one where it's like, what are they doing? And then they just come out hell bent.
they're not beating Phoenix. And then that 12 noon game at Charlotte, that is like interesting. 12 noon on a Friday. Is that okay? That's day after Thanksgiving. Oh boy. Oh boy. I don't like that game at all, Coach.
Hey, it's gonna
I
get
do not
interesting.
like that. And,
But
and it's the last game of the trip too. I don't like that game at all.
I hope Tibbs is playing 9 men by then at least, 9 or 10. I mean, Precious should be back by then at least. He'll be back within a week.
I hope so.
Payne, and then hopefully Shamit soon as well. But that shoulder's no joke
I
as
I I,
well.
I like the chats of Chris Goodwin and Dirty Dancer. Thank you, Dirty. He says I should be in the Hall of Fame. Somebody's Hall of Fame. Not in any yet. And Chris says I'm not high on the Knicks who are filled with talent. I didn't say that. What I said was in the conference that the Knicks play in, there's Boston and everybody else, and the Knicks are at the top of everybody else. That's as high as I can get. That's being real. I'm being a realist here. We're talking about the champions, boys. The
Yeah, but also
champions who flogged them on opening night.
it's right to say that now because it's early impressions. We're not even a quarter way through the season. The beauty is the next time we talk, it might be talking in a different light. You know, things
There
can
is,
happen.
there's
Uh,
that.
we haven't seen anything close to a Jalen Brunson that we saw last season, right? I agree with the concerns over Cat, in the long term, playing the five full time and the anchoring of the defense. You are going to have to need another big man that's going to shoulder that load. But yeah, whether that's Precious, Mitch, Hakpority, Sims, whether that is OG Ananobi playing some of the five, right? It's going to be makeshift, but
What
we'll see.
when you go back all the way back to the acquisition of Earl Monroe, the Knicks always, when they acquire all-star frontline players, they ask them to be something that they're not. Carmelo Anthony is one of the best threes on the planet. Comes here, he's got to play the four. Latrell Sprewell and do stuff he wasn't used to doing. Larry Johnson, Had to do stuff he wasn't used to doing, and plus he was physically beaten down by that point. Another guy who, once that body starts to go, you're not coming back from that. It's just not happening. And now Karl Anthony Towns, stretch 4, gifted big. Now the Knicks need him to be a center.
Well, I'm not comparing the two, but what's the differences that you see between Patrick Ewing when he was the jump shooting kind of center that you said a guard in a big's body? What's the similarities and the differences you see between him and potentially Cat filling that role?
Well, first of all, it was a different era. It was a different style of play. So for Patrick to step out and shoot from that elbow was not what most centers were doing. There were a couple who would do it. But when it came time to go down on that block, Patrick knew how to do that. And when he came to the NBA, he had a defensive DNA that was second to none, the Hoya Destroyer. Rebounder, shot blocker, intimidator, all of that at Georgetown, where he didn't have to deal with Michael Jordan very often. But still, it was a different game. Now big men are encouraged to do what Karl Anthony Towns does, what a healthy Joel Embiid does, what a healthy Kristaps Porzingis does, even to a little bit of a lesser level, what a healthy Anthony Davis does. It's a different game. The game is about spacing the floor and making people defend the three-point line. When Patrick was playing, it was about mid-range, it was inside, it was penetration. Now the game is three-pointers, occasional penetration, and breakaway dunks. That's the game now. That's the style of offense that is being played in the NBA. So what Patrick did was in a totally different time, totally different style of play. That's why that's what made the Knicks special. That's what made the Knicks wear those black sneakers come playoff time. Because they would come in to kick your ass, take your name, and no layups allowed.
Yeah, but that was the thing. It was the complete opposite of this Knicks graphic. Put the paint on lock and basically, gobble up everything else. Right in the '80s, it was you're not getting anything close to the rim. Right,
No.
but right now we're giving up 47% from two and only giving up 33% from distance. Right, so there is some evidence there that the Knicks 3-point defense is where it needs to be, but the opposite needs to improve, right? And as we face more teams, though, we are disciplined giving up the least amount of free throws. I don't know if that's because we're just giving up layups, Bill, or if that's because we're not as physical, but we're only allowing 18 free throw attempts, which is first in the league right now.
Well, God rest his soul, but where's Anthony Mason when you need him?
Absolutely, rest in peace, Mace. But yeah, the New York Knicks layup line is in full effect. But the Bucks, OG Anunoby, they weren't a match for the Knicks. Let's hope it can be more of that. And Bill, it's always a pleasure. What have you got coming up? What are you doing recently?
It's interesting. I'm doing stuff with photography and now even videography, which is something I never thought I'd be doing. But we're doing a lot of video with our church in Summit, New Jersey, Fountain Baptist Church. You can see our exploits on YouTube.
I
Full
saw it.
services,
I saw
highlights,
the
and
video.
I'm shooting a lot of that stuff, working with some really gifted, really talented people. uh, Stephen Pfeiffer, who is part of our praise team. He is the person who does the editing on it. It is marvelous work that he does. He's a good brother, and I am proud and honored to work with him. The photography thing is getting interesting. I'm not trying to make any money from it. It's something that I just enjoy doing. Um, Talking with some interesting people, uh, doing the best I can with my health, and I'm still very active. Bowling, not so much golfing now because the weather's about to change, even though we haven't had rain for like 6 weeks here in the New York metropolitan area. And now we got wildfires burning over here in New Jersey. So, watching the Knicks, spending time with my granddaughter. I was with my granddaughter today at a place called the Bubble Museum. That was wild. That was crazy. You know. So doing stuff like that, just trying to live my best life and keep an eye on friends and family and good friends like you, Clem.
Well, yeah, keep being you. Love the hearing about the golf game. Let me know if you do get back out on the course. But bowling, I'm sure you got me covered on that one. I've
Bowling
never.
is a little bit of a struggle this year because we have some issues with our team. 2 years ago, we won the championship, but now it's seniors bowling, man. And when you put that word seniors in front of it, the health part of it gets very unpredictable. So,
We got some Jersey peeps in the house as
oh
well.
yeah, I'm up here by Newark, Brian. I'm up here by
Represent
Newark.
Newark, New Jersey. And in terms of your YouTube, right? Is there a YouTube that people can see, or is it more of a private one?
No, it's we you can subscribe to our church, Fountain Baptist Church, Summit, New Jersey. If you go to YouTube and type that in, you'll see some stuff. You'll see some good stuff that's good for you.
Yep. Excellent, excellent. We go New York Knicks go, and let's hope that we are talking about a team on a hot streak
Wait a
later this
minute.
season.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Yep, yep. What have you got?
Just so you know, when I was at the Bubble Museum today, I was wearing this.
Wow, that's fire. Who
There you
needs who needs Kiss
go. Okay.
when you've got that
Okay.
throwback?
How about that? There you go.
That's a
With
hardwood
with with
classic.
great with the great old school logo on the shoulder. Okay. So I represent. I rep. I
Anyone
rep.
stop you? Anyone ask you a question about Brunson or
Uh,
Cap?
no, but you know what I get a lot? You look familiar. Yeah, okay. You might
Hey,
have seen me
for a
somewhere.
guy on radio, you don't get that very
Yeah,
often.
you might have seen me somewhere before. Can't figure it
They, they probably heard your voice or remembered you from MSG
out. Oh, yeah.
as well. Um,
And now they see me on YouTube every now and then with great people like you.
yeah, look, on that note, I'll take that and run, fam. Appreciate everyone in the chat. Replay squad, salute. Smash that like button. We'll talk to Bill again later this season, no doubt about it. And keep the streets buzzing. And I will see you again soon. Peace, everyone.